I worked at a small, family-owned inn during my senior year of high school. It wasn't the kind of place that attracted many tourists, just a few travelers passing through or people looking for a quick overnight stay. The inn had a vintage charm to it, creaky wooden floors, floral wallpaper from decades past, and a lobby that always smelled faintly of lavender. There were only 14 rooms, and we'd never be fully booked. Usually I'd sit behind the desk doing homework or reading, the phone rarely ringing, and the silence only broken by the occasional shuffle of guests coming in or out. It was late one Saturday evening when the last guest arrived. I remember the clock on the wall ticking past 11 p.m., and I was about to close up for the night. The door chimed softly, and a man stepped into the lobby. He was tall, dressed in an old, heavy coat that looked like something from another era. His appearance was striking, pale skin, sunken eyes, and an almost ethereal quality to him, like he didn't quite belong. But what really stood out was the fact that he had no luggage, not a single bag, not even a small suitcase, just him and that long, dark coat. He didn't say much. Actually, he didn't say anything at all. He merely nodded when I greeted him and handed him the key to room 12. I found it strange, but didn't think too much of it at the time. We got all sorts of odd people at the inn, and I wasn't one to ask questions unless necessary. Room 12 was tucked away at the far end of the building, slightly separated from the other rooms, and it was one of the least occupied. I gave him a small smile, but he didn't return it, simply turning and heading down the long hallway toward his room. The next morning, I began my usual routine of cleaning the rooms. It wasn't a busy weekend, so there wasn't much to do. I started at room 1 and made my way down. By the time I reached room 12, I noticed something strange. The door was locked, which was unusual. Most guests left the doors slightly ajar, especially if they were still inside. I knocked a few times but got no response. Assuming the man had already checked out, I used my master key to enter the room. The first thing I noticed was the chill in the air. It was unusually cold, even though it was early spring and the weather had been mild. The room was eerily silent, and it felt as though the temperature had dropped several degrees. The bed was unmade, which wasn't uncommon, but something about it felt off. The sheets were pulled back in a haphazard way, and the pillows were tossed aside as if someone had left in a hurry. Yet, there was no trace of the guest, no bags, no personal belongings, nothing. It was as if the man had never been there at all. I hurried back to the front desk to check the guest book, wanting to confirm his name, but when I opened the book to the previous night's entries, I couldn't remember what I had written. My own handwriting looked smudged and unclear, as though the ink had faded overnight. The guest's name was illegible, almost like it had been erased. A strange feeling settled over me, but I tried to shake it off. Maybe I had just been tired and hadn't noticed. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the man in room 12. Every time I passed the door, I felt an odd sense of unease. The other guests didn't seem to notice anything strange, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I asked my coworkers if they remembered the man who had checked in, but none of them had seen him. It was like he had appeared, stayed for a night, and vanished without a trace. Things got weirder when the cold spots started appearing around the inn. It wasn't just room 12 anymore. There were random pockets of cold air in the hallway, in the lobby, even in the rooms where guests were staying. I'd see people shivering as they walked through the lobby, but no one could explain why it was so cold in certain places. A week later, one of the regular guests, a middle-aged woman who stayed at the inn during business trips, mentioned something strange. She asked me if the inn had always had a resident ghost, saying she'd felt someone watching her from the hallway during her last stay. I laughed it off, but inside I was terrified. She wasn't the only one. Over the next few months, more and more guests began reporting odd occurrences. Doors locking by themselves, whispers in empty rooms, and that bone-chilling cold that never seemed to go away. I couldn't take it anymore. I quit the job a few months later, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong with room 12. But the inn continued to operate. Last I heard, The strange occurrences were still happening, and some guests even requested to stay in room 12, intrigued by the rumors of a haunting. To this day, I wonder who or what that last guest was. And sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the faint creak of a floorboard, the whisper of a cold breeze, and I can't help but remember that distorted face staring back at me from the end of the hallway.